All right. Hey. All right. We're here. Hello, everybody. I'm Carmel Clark, and I'm a master transformational coach. I'm going to be talking today about our excuses. I'm so excited about this. So I'm going to just go ahead and give just a moment, get my little self set up here. There we go. And I just want you to think about your excuses. So I posted a little bit about this, and if you've seen anything about this idea, we're going to dive into it more deeply. But what I'm really focusing on today is our excuses. Sometimes our excuses happen, right? Where do they come from? Sometimes they happen because we need to take a break or we need to slow down, right? Excuses always happen for a reason. Sometimes there are protection because we have emotions that we need to acknowledge that are really hard. But also, strangely, excuses can come up when our feelings of being an imposter build up inside, eventually giving way to excuses. So, which one of these is the strongest voice of your excuses? Let's go through them. I have them broken down and they're kind of fun. So you'll probably want a pencil and paper, be able to take a few notes here because there's some really great stuff. So the first one is the Judge Judy. The Judge Judy excuse pattern or excuses are when you're agitated and judgmental towards yourself for not just simply doing it. You can hear that voice in your head. Are you kidding me? You know better, right? Those are the Judge Judy excuses that come in. The second kind of excuses that happen are the hanged man. So, at the hanged man excuses, you actually feel at the mercy of your own saboteur inside, right? That's part of our shadow self. And we feel, right, if this is happening to you, you feel unable to move past the excuses that come up. The hanged man usually says something along the lines of, I would if I could. There's just that feeling of, ugh, I just can't. Then the third type of excuse pattern that we have that comes up is the Sisyphus. So, yes, there's a little philosophical reference there. The Sisyphus is when your excuses tell you that they're too big and unending for you to even try. It's the same thing over and over. Basically, it's hopeless. And then the fourth kind of excuse pattern we will encounter is what I call the avid avoider. When I actually wrote this down, I thought, "Oh my god, I've I've named the thing my nemesis, the thing I've been up against so much in my life." So what is the avid avoider? I mean, we all have all of these, and I've done, experienced all of them, but the avid avoider seems to be, that one that comes up the most often. Avid avoider says, I have to do this first, or I put in so much today and I'm just too tired. I'll get to it tomorrow. Or if I don't think about it, I won't have to deal with it right now. The avid avoider is really common. And I'm going to talk about why it's so common as well. So the final one, the fifth pattern of our excuses is what I call the stern parent. The stern parent goes like this: You're not going anywhere until you get this finished. Followed by any combination of the others, the avid avoider, the Sisyphus, the Judge Judy, you name it, any of those, right? Even the hanged man. So, how do you know if your excuses are from dealing with your feeling like a fraud, basically the imposter syndrome? If it's an imposter going on and that's what's causing your excuses. Well, in one of my previous mini master classes, I talk about the imposter in detail because what I have found is that when I understand something more completely, I'm also able to understand myself better, right? More completely. And the better we understand ourselves, that really is this key. And that's what's in this little mini master class today. That's this key to our being able to move ourselves forward. So let's really talk about the imposter for just a moment. It's everywhere. People are talking about it a lot. For me, I'm not one of those people with the imposter that's like, oh, here's a step by step of what you need to do to, take care of the imposter, because I feel like it's a combination of understanding what's going on in us that the imposter's coming up and how we interact with ourselves consciously, as well as the steps that we're going to take. So, I love what I'm trying to, Richard, what was his last name? It'll come back to me. New York Times article about imposter syndrome. He did the Venn diagram that I love so much, right? What you're really good at, what you get paid for, and where those two overlap right there in the middle is where he calls the imposter syndrome, or where we feel like a fraud. Anyway, one of the things he says in his article that's so fantastic is that's different than other things I've seen out there is he said, I just, stop resisting it. I feel like it's best to be able to make the imposter a friend, to recognize when it shows up and realize that it's popping up because there's some things going on inside. And his approach to me is the one that most aligns with the transformational leadership work that I do and the work of consciousness and self that I do. And what I know about this kind of work, right, consciousness of self and transformational leadership, is that it actually produces real long lasting results. We're not trying to find the band-aid or the quick fix or well, if you'll just do this, then it will work, right? Well, we all know that. We know if I just do this, it will work. What's missing? Well, we're missing. We are the part that's missing in that. I'm looking out here, not looking at myself, trying to find the answer to fix this, instead of looking at myself and asking myself the questions about what is it that I need? What's really going on? Let me get to know myself better and then work with me, just as Richard talked about in his article, right? Work with myself. In this way, that means working with my own imposter, because it's not going to, just simply vanish one day. There's always going to be, new levels if we're reaching for bigger things, that we want to do. So, all right, so let's talk about the imposter for just a moment. I break it down into three parts, but I'm going to give just two parts today because those are the main ones. The first is the fraud. The imposter will show up looking like the fraud. And how does that appear in your life and mine? Well, it always happens where we make something look easy, right? The fraud shows up where we make it look easy. We love what we're good at, right? Or what we're doing, either what we're doing or what we're good at. We underestimate the value, and then we discount that value. So we underestimate the value and then discount the value after we make it look easy and we love what we're doing or what we're good at. And that is this little recipe for the fraud to show up. And all of a sudden there's this like, oh my God, am I really doing this? Is this really happening? Like, people are paying me for this, or like people believe me, or, do I really know what I'm doing? Am I going to mess up? Is that, I'm going to go off the cliff and crash and burn hard. So that's how the fraud looks. The second one is the visibility credibility monster, is what I call it. The visibility credibility monster. So the breakdown of the visibility credibility monster is like this. We're sincere in our contribution. Like, we're 100% all in. We're very focused. We're very sincere, and very much in our authenticity. And we do fine in this form of the imposter. We do fine with smaller steps of being visible and credited for what we're doing. We also feel that we have to earn everything in order to be credible. Like, it can't just land on our laps. We have to really earn it. We have to go after that. We have to work hard. We have to prove ourselves. We have to prove the merit of everything that we're putting out there. And then another part of it is that we're afraid to take the steps into the greater visibility because we're afraid that the credibility in us will fall apart. So this is a key for the visibility credibility monster in that form of the imposter. We're afraid to take the steps into greater visibility because we are afraid or even sure that our credibility will fall apart. Now, I'll just mention here too that we both desire the recognition when we're in this form of the imposter, and we fear the exposure, right? Both at the same time. We want that recognition, and even there's that sense that we deserve it, right? But there is also that fear of exposure that happens. So let's bring it all back down to our excuses. Our ego's job is to keep us safe, to protect us, right? People have given the ego a bad rap. And for my myself, I see the ego as just a part of who we are. That's going to be a part of us our whole lives. And it serves a very important purpose, as we know. That purpose primarily is to keep us protected, to keep us safe. So when insecurities pop up from feeling like we're an imposter, which is so totally normal, right? We all have that. Our ego steps in quickly, right? We're insecure. The ego's like, oh, we don't feel safe. Let's step in. We're going to do it. Our ego wants to keep us safe and sound in that comfort zone. And this is where we will begin to make excuses. Pretty much all of us do this. So I want you to assess what form your excuses usually take. I already just went through the 5, and we're going to go into that again. And let's find the path forward out of the imposter for each one of these excuses. And that's your takeaway here today. So make sure, first of all, you want to identify which are the excuse patterns that most come up for you in your life, first of all, right? Like, that's the important thing. And then we're going to go through each one of them, and you've got some notes for each of those that will actually help you. And you'll probably want to be able to, pause the video, go back, pause it, and write some of these things down because they're pretty awesome. All right. So the first one, right? The Judge Judy, you're agitated and judgmental toward yourself for not just simply getting it done. Are you kidding me? You know better. Then there's the Hanged Man. You feel at the mercy of your own saboteur, your own shadow self. You feel like you're unable to move past the excuses that are coming up. You say to yourself, I would if I could, right? And then the Sisyphus. Your excuses tell you things are too big and unending for you to even try. It's the same thing over and over. I can't handle it. It's overwhelming. It's hopeless. And then the avid avoider. I have to do this first. Or I put in so much today and I'm just too tired. I'll have to just get to it tomorrow. But we do it every day, right? We repeat that over and over. And if I don't think about it, then I won't have to deal with it right now. So I'm just going to push it off to the side and not think about it. And then the stern parent, you're not going anywhere until you get this finished. Anybody else have that experience? Followed by any combination of the others, the avid avoider, the Sisyphus, and etc. So let's talk about the Judge Judy, right? The Judge Judy excuses show up when we're really afraid. So I want you to just think about that for a moment, right? Just stop and take a breath and calm your mind. That's the number one thing to do when the Judge Judy excuses show up. When you hear that haranguing voice in your mind that's yelling at you to just get it done and then judging you and criticizing you for not having gotten it done already. Just stop, take a deep breath, calm your mind, and then I ask you, can you name your fear or your fears? Because that's when the Judge Judy shows up. We're afraid. So it's important to name those fears. Susan Jeffers, in her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, talks about this phenomenon that when we actually pause, when we stop and we start to name the fear or the fears that are going on for us, it actually gives us power in the situation. So can you name the fear or the fears that are coming up that have popped up because your imposter syndrome has been kicked off? And then the next step on that, after you take the breath and calm your mind, stop, do that, and then name the fears, is what can you do and what do you not have control over? So this is really essential with the Judge Judy pattern. We have to be able to let ourselves off the hook of the things that we don't have any control over. Because usually when this is happening, we feel this enormous sense of responsibility to have to, fix it or get it done, or to, there's this part of us that is attached to the outcome, right? Making sure that it happens for whatever reasons. We feel obligated, or we feel that we're going to let other people down or disappoint them, things like that. So what can you do and what do you not have control over is that next step. When we let go of what we don't have control over, right, by standing with it and deciding to accept whatever happens that we can't control, we actually open up the ability to move forward. So let me just explain that one more time. When we go into the what I don't have control over, we're giving ourselves that opportunity to let go of what we don't have control over by just being with it, standing with it, and deciding to accept, right, that whatever happens, we can't control in that particular part of it. It's coming to terms, right? This kind of emotional letting go. And that is always first, right? We have to emotionally let go before we can logically let go. So that's why it's so important with the what do I not have control over, to walk into it, recognize what it is, stand with it, and decide to accept whatever happens, whatever outcomes occur in those places that we can't control, right? And then we do have the things that we can do in the situation. And we've now gotten clarity on what that is. We've gotten clarity on what we can do and what we have no control over. That allows us in the Judge Judy pattern to take the next small, simple step, and then the next. And then you're on your way out of the Judge Judy, out of the imposter syndrome. All right, so let's jump to the Hanged Man. The hangman is one form of feeling like a victim in this situation. There are many different forms, but it is one of them. And the thing about that is that people are so judgmental of the victim, but the victim is a survival archetype, according to Carolyn Mace. And I agree with Carolyn Mace that we will experience the victim in ourselves, in our lives, as one of the teachers. So instead of resisting it, I just like to look at it and understand it and recognize that it's going to be, just like my ego, a part of my lived experience. So here we are with the Hanged Man, and it's a form of feeling like a victim. First, when your inner victim shows up, it's always important, it's always essential to be compassionate with yourself, right? The reason that I talk about that, and I'll explain this right here, is that you have real feelings connected to your imposter, and they're asking for your understanding. So when the Hanged Man shows up, what you've got going on underneath is a lot of emotion that just needs you to be compassionate to it, to show up and understand what you're really feeling. So that's what you do here. You sit down with yourself compassionately and you say, all right, what am I really feeling? What's really going on under the surface? And as you ask those questions and start to name those feelings, and you can write them down, you can speak out loud, share it with somebody else, which is always really quite powerful to do. You're going to start to move yourself out of the Hanged Man pattern. That's the beginning of that movement. Right? And then the second step after you've done that is to figure out your next small decision. It's a decision that you're figuring out, not an action. Why is that? Because when we're in a victim place, the first thing we have to, I guess not the first, when we're in a victim place, the first active step out of that is coming back to our choice. Right? So first you're compassionate with yourself. You get connected and find out what you're really feeling underneath so you can understand yourself. And then you move into, what is my next small decision? What is the next choice that I have? Go to that moment. Don't go to just try to get to the action step. Go to the actual choice. What is that choice for me? Because it's either going to be to stay where you are, right, in the Hanged Man, or to take one small action step, but you want to get to the decision point first. So then once you get to that next small decision, that decision point, then ask yourself, can I take this action step? Yes or no? And if it's a no, you go back up and you look at the feelings that are going on compassionately, and you start that process again and you go through it. If the answer is yes, then you ask yourself, will I take this action step? Yes or no? And if there's a no, you go back up to the feelings of compassion toward yourself and start that process again and move through in order. If the answer is yes, I will take this action step, then the third question is when? And now you're at this place of your total being in power, right, in your life of, I decide when I'm going to do this, and you're listening to and trusting yourself on that next small action step. Now, I want to point out that this three question protocol that I just used, can I take this step? Will I take this step? And when? Is actually a protocol that comes from Hale Dwoskin in his book, The Sedona Method. It's really amazing, really quite powerful. So here you are now going through this process, moving forward out of the hanged man. It always requires working with the emotional self in order to be successful. Keep that in mind. So the hanged man's never going to respond just directly to your logical attempts to try and get you moving forward. It's going to hang on and you're going to keep spinning your wheels. So deal with the emotional. Now let's go to the third one, the Sisyphus. So the Sisyphus, if you can imagine Sisyphus pushing that big boulder up the hill only to have it roll back down, and then he starts again and pushes the boulder up the hill, right? Part of our Greek mythology. So the Sisyphus happens often to overachievers, which I think is kind of funny, interesting. Not funny, great, but funny, interesting. Personally, because why? We bite off more than we can chew at a time. Does that sound familiar? Um, because the imposter syndrome disproportionately affects high achievers, this excuse monster is a prevalent one for us to deal with. So, right away with the Sisyphus, you need perspective. The way you're looking at the situation is the problem. Okay. For shifting perspective, a number of approaches work. Let's talk about those. And you may have some of your own already in place for shifting perspective, which is awesome. You want to have those. Let's talk about these in this context. First, I would say get away or get outside. So you have to walk away from where you are right now because where you're sitting in the room, what you've had for breakfast, the way your day has gone so far, everything that's on your plate for the week, all of those things are forming, even the conversations you've had with loved ones or whatever, it's all forming your perspective right here and now that you have, and you need to step outside of that perspective. So that's why I say get away from where you are. Change your location, change your music, get outside if you're inside, go somewhere different, do something creative, even for 15 minutes. Other ways are to be able to talk through the overwhelm with someone who listens well and doesn't try to fix you, right? When you're listening to talking to somebody who really listens well, you're able to move yourself forward through the perspective you've been in into a new one, because somebody else isn't trying to jump in and fix. And you're like, no, let me explain. Or you jump on what they say instead of listening to yourself. Both are not good. So you don't need someone else's answer, right? You just need your own perspective shift in this. So that's when you're talking to somebody else. Then I also have an idea about this where you can write out every single action step on sticky notes. This is a really great one. I've done this, many times in my life where I get the sticky notes and I write out the action steps, little notes, right? And then I put them on the wall and then I start to figure out how they organize the most effectively for myself, right? Because it gives me a different perspective. I'm able to take all the things that are jumbled up inside, get them outside on sticky notes, put them on the wall, and then move them around and create the perspective that feels more empowered to me, right? It's a really great way to be able to start moving again. Um, and so let's see. So talk through, yep. So what you're after when you do all of this is to find the right next small step. By shifting your perspective, you're on the path. You're the detective trying to find the right next small step to take. And then once you shift your perspective and take that single small step, you're going to start moving again and you'll feel your energy and your power begin to return. So if you think about Sisyphus, huge muscles, big dude, pushing that rock, that big boulder up the mountain. Once you have the perspective shift and take that small single step, your movement starts to happen on a flat surface or a much more level surface. You're going to feel your energy and your power begin to return to you. Now, one thing I'm going to mention with the Sisyphus is that this is one that you probably have to repeat this process, right, over and over along the way, because just because you got moving with that one small step doesn't mean that your overachiever won't try to take everything on in one big bite again. So you may have to step yourself back a number of times with a certain project and do this same protocol again to bring yourself back to each next small step that keeps you moving forward. All right, let's talk about the avid avoider. Okay, so the avid avoider is a true gamer. Um, you have to know here that you're dealing with conflicting desires. So what do I mean by true gamer? The avid avoider works on gaming you, basically, always. Oh, I'm going to say this to get this. And, there's this kind of manipulative aspect in the avid avoider that's going on. But why? Why are we manipulating ourselves when we are dealing with the avid avoider in our excuse pattern? Like I just said, it's because we have conflicting desires. Let's go into that. What do I mean? Well, you both want to accomplish the thing that you're avoiding, right? You want to get it done, or you would like for it to be done. And you would much rather be doing other things that you want to do or that you enjoy that are easier and simpler, usually. And so you're caught between these two desires, right? So you can force the avid avoider to get it done. But if you do that, if you force yourself, if you use the stern parent or the Judge Judy or whatever to get the thing done, just get it done, you're going to keep fighting the avid avoider battle every day, over and over and over again, because you have conflicting desires. And those don't just go away. Your desires belong to you. They come naturally out of you. So what do we do with those conflicting desires? First, decide you're going to do the thing. So this is the number one thing. You first step back and you say, when you find the avid avoider and you've got like these conflicting desires inside, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to do it. I decide I'm going to do it, right? Why? Because the avid avoider needs a decision. The decision point is very powerful. So you're going to get out of that kind of avoid moment that you're recycling over and over again and just say, well, I'm going to do it. We haven't decided anything else about that, but we've just decided we're going to do it. Okay, there's the decision. And then the next step is that you define incentives. So the avid avoider works on incentives, right, with these ideas of desires. So set clear time and priorities for yourself for the things that you enjoy that you want to do. Figure it out. If that's like, okay, well, I'm going to get down and do this, but then I'm going to give myself this block of time that's completely unstructured, because that's what I love, right? Unstructured time. I can do anything I want. Or I'm going to set this time aside where I'm going to paint. I'm going to set this time aside where I get to go out and have fun. I'm going to set this time aside where I'm going to make this amazing gourmet dinner for myself and my friends. Whatever it is, you decide what your incentives are, and you clear the time and set the priorities for those things that you enjoy. You make sure that they're there. You're not just pushing them out. Oh, I'll get to them. I want to do that. And then your avid avoider keeps you, binge watching Netflix, or, going and taking a nap, or, just doing all the things, diving down the social media rabbit hole or whatever, and not getting the things done. So we're going to step out of that. So you define incentives, set those clear time and priorities for those things. And then you give the avid avoider a small enjoyment now. You guys, this really works. So when this is the pattern that's come up, once you've decided to do the thing and you've defined your incentives and you've made clear priorities and time for them, then right then and there, you decide what's the thing that will be this little incentive right now, this small enjoyment right now. So it could be a power nap, right? 10-minute power nap. It could be another cup of your favorite coffee. That's a big one for me. It could be a short walk. I'm going to get out and walk around the block. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. Walk around the block. Whew, feels so much better. Or quickly getting the dishes washed, because, organizing is a great motivator for some people. It is for me, as definitely. Or, baby animal videos. I mean, when all else fails, baby animal videos. But what I want you to see is that you're giving your avid avoider some small enjoyment right now before you move into doing the thing. And when you set yourself up this way, the avid avoider just really calms down, because you're no longer fighting these conflicting desires. You're taking care of them now in the small enjoyment, and taking care of those desires after you've done the thing. Plus, you're going to do the thing that you want to have finished or accomplished, or you want to do it, but it's going to be harder to do than the other things you also desire. So it allows you to move forward in those. All right, so now the final one. We're coming down to the end here. The final one is the stern parent. The stern parent is the taskmaster, right? No one wants to be motivated by being beaten over the head, especially by themselves. But we do learn to do this to ourselves, don't we? I mean, most of us do. I don't know that all of us, but quite a few. And I like to ask when the stern parent shows up for me or for anybody else that I might be working with or having a conversation with, I like to ask, well, what if it's because I was positively motivated? What would that look like? What would it be like if I wasn't like beating myself up, or if you weren't, if I did think beating yourself up to to do the thing, what would it look like? Where would that come from? It gives this moment of reflection into the self to say, oh, I'm doing this. And do I really want to do this? Because we are the deciders in our life, right? We're the decision makers. So I get to have this little self reflective moment to say, yeah, I don't want to be the stern parent taskmaster as the way to get things done. I want to find a way that feels good, that's better. So that's the first thing that I say on that one. The second is understanding and encouragement are the key here. So, what you might call the supportive parent. So, first of all, is that question to myself: what if I did it in a positive way or motivated myself in ways that I liked? And then giving myself understanding and encouragement, basically showing up in that authority place with myself with real understanding and encouragement. So it's that difference between, your parents saying, no, you got to sit there at the kitchen table and finish your math homework until it's done, versus the parent coming, sitting down with you and saying, here, I don't remember that much about math, but we can figure it out together and we'll get through it together. And you're not in this alone. And we can definitely do this. You're going to be fine. We got it handled. So you see that difference between the stern parent idea and the supportive parent idea, understanding and encouragement. So, what you do in this context is you take the time to reflect on the fact that you matter. It's really important when you're going to step in as the supportive parent with yourself or in that format, right? You have to first stop, because when the stern parent has been part of your life and you're going to move into understanding and encouragement, the way you get there is by reflecting on the fact that you matter, that you're important. And that exists no matter what you do or don't do, right? So you're letting yourself off the hook of these external expectations that the stern parent has, been playing in your head and maybe played in your life previously in some form. And you just get down to the reality that you matter, that you're important, no matter what you do and don't do. Once you can connect to that feeling inside, you recognize that the stern parent that plays in our heads undermines our value by always focusing on the task over how we really feel. Okay. It's not that we weren't going to get that math homework done. It just was what? Overwhelming, or we felt like we just didn't understand it. We were critical of ourselves for not getting it. There are any number of reasons. And so when we focus on the task that has to get done over how we feel, what we're essentially telling ourselves is that we really don't matter, that we're not important. So that's why it's important to make sure that we start there. Then we show up with that understanding and encouragement with ourselves, and we move ourselves out of that negative forcing of the stern parent that's always inevitably going to lead us into being the avid avoider. That's the next step, or the Sisyphus, right? Or something like that's too big, I can't handle it, or, I'll get to it later because, I have other things. So we want to make sure that you're moving out of that forcing place with the stern parent. And then from here, once you get to this point with yourself, with that recognizing, moving yourself into understanding and encouragement, knowing that you matter no matter what you do or don't do, that allows you to bypass all of these other excuse patterns. And you can find, with any of those that we've just walked through, you can find the positive forward moving steps. Maybe they're the positive forward steps of the avid avoider. You go into that part. Or maybe they're the positive forward steps of the Sisyphus, right? Where you walk through that protocol, or the Judge Judy. But what you'll find is that once you get through this first part of the stern parent, you're going to really recognize the protocol of moving forward from many of the others. That's going to be like, yep, that's it. That's what I want to do. And you're able to take that next small step. All right. So that takes us through how to deal with those excuses. And this is real stuff. It's so good. It's so powerful. And it really works. I want to say here, we're all wise inside, every one of us. when I interact with children, right, you get down on their level, you have a conversation, there's so much wisdom, and that doesn't go away. When we are really connected to ourselves, really listening to ourselves, we are wise inside. And each one of these little breakdowns of our excuses and the protocols to work with them are coming from that place of recognizing our wisdom and working with our wise self, right? That's why they are so effective. Instead of trying to force it, we're working with, we're not in resistance with ourselves. And we can't be connected to our wisdom if we are resisting ourselves. So it's essential for us to step out of that and recognize that we are wise inside. This means that we all have our own clarity and our own ability to live our lives authentically and powerfully on our own terms. So remember that, that as you're confronting things that come up, you are not the obstacles that get in your way. That's not who you are. It's not who I am, right? They're just part of figuring out the life, doing the path. So, how do we wake up and listen to ourselves more clearly if we are this wise self inside? How do we pay attention to what's trying to get our attention underneath all of those excuses and our imposter showing up? And I've walked you through some of those pieces there. This authentic and decisive clarity is the essence of the work that I do in the wake up call experiences that I lead. So, you've probably heard me talk about that. And if you haven't, then I invite you to really learn about it because it's so really powerful and amazing. And what I want to do just today, after we've walked through this little mini masterclass, is invite you to take what you've done here today and go deeper for yourself, right? You have the ability to move forward through your own wisdom and your own clarity. And that's what I do with my people who come and join me in the wake up call experience. So, the wake up call experience is transform your inner imposter. That's our focus in this next wake up call experience happening very soon. It's coming up quickly, May 19th and 21st. So, May 19th is a Thursday. It's the evening that we're doing it, 2.5 hours. We start at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, that's 7 Eastern Time, 6 Central, and 4 Pacific, if you find yourself in those time zones. Excuse me. And then Saturday, 2.5 hours again. I split it up for a reason. I'll tell you that in a moment. 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So that'll be 12 Eastern Time and 11 Central, and of course, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. And we go for 2.5 hours on that Saturday as well. And the registration link is below, and I invite you to really take a look at it because the experience is incredible. The breakthroughs are really, really there. They're every time I lead this, because it's a done together, it's not a learn about, right? I don't tell you, we show together. It's a show don't tell kind of format. And that's what I love, right? If there's not traction on the ground, if you're not walking out the door with actual change and results for yourself, then that's really not my gig. I just have to say it. That's not my gig. I want to always be able to have real traction from the time I spend to really focus on things. I don't just want to learn about them. And that's the format that I've developed that I do in the Wake Up Call event. So, the power of this, right? This focused work is really, if you're ready to do this, if you've come to that place in your life, we've gone through this little mini training and you're like, wow, okay, so I'm ready for the next steps to confront my imposter in real time and work with moving myself forward in the places that are calling to me, but I've been holding myself back. Could be anything. I've had people come in, they're like, I need to make a total life change. People that say, this is, a career situation for me. I need to make a shift, a major pivot, a shift here. Or oftentimes people say, I don't know, I just feel it. I know that there's like something and I need to figure out what it is. And we do that. I love doing that, right? Out of 100 trillion possibilities, we come quickly right down to whatever that thing is. And why? Because we are wise inside. And because, I'm pretty skilled at this and I know how to get in there with you and get down to that clarity and open it up, and we move forward very, very fast. So this is really kind of a coached style, right, that I do with the wake up call experience. Well, kind of really it is a coach style in a group setting, but it's really magical as well. So I invite you to join me I'll tell you, if you feel that little twist in your gut, then you know it's time. I'm going to do this. It's not expensive at all to join. So go ahead and check out that registration link and sign up to join me, and we'll begin shortly. I'd love to meet you and dive in with you together. Thank you for joining me with this mini masterclass today with taking on your excuses and being able to understand how to move yourself forward. It's really been a pleasure. Take care. Have a